Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Thumb Fun, and with me today, because I've got him under my thumb, is my good friend S.C. McPeter. Say hi!
Some fun, eh, kid?
Yeah, nyuk, nyuk, nyuk. But seriously, try and say Thumb Fun really fast 10 times. But just to get a few bits of info out of the way, as mentioned, it's Thumb Fun. Released on the 1st of March 1952. It had a Blue Ribbon reissue sometime in 1961. It's the 643rd in the series, and it's directed by Bob McKimson. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Superstars Porky Pig DVD set. There is a HD version out there, which has disappeared at the time of this recording. Hopefully it'll come back at some point, and hopefully on a physical release. Now, if you haven't seen this short, I can't show you the full thing here due to copyright on YouTube, but essentially, Daffy decides, you know what, he's going to thumb his way down south as opposed to flying, which I guess that's a thing. But anyway, so he's trying to hitchhike down, he manages to get in Porky Pig's car, and he's, of course, obnoxious, while Porky Pig is the straight man, as we see in these late 40s, early 50s McKimson, Porky, Daffy team-ups. Now, not much by way of trivia, so I'll just go right through those. First of all, the title is a pun on some fun, eh, kid? You know, that kind of saying. Thumb fun, some fun, yeah, whatever. This is actually not the first time Daffy thinks flying south is dumb. He actually did so in Norm McCabe's short Daffy's Southern Exposure, although in this case, he actually wants to go south, as opposed to back then, and there's even going to be another short this year about flying south.
It must have just been a thought. Maybe vacation-wise, it was something that they had been thinking about. We'll never know exactly why going south was this relevant at the studio during this period.
Exactly. We'll be definitely covering that short pretty soon. And in a very blink and you miss a moment, we have the Chef Thomas restaurant, which is possibly a reference to the actual background artist who was Richard H. Thomas. I don't see it as being anything else, so I don't know. Unless Richard was married to a Chef Thomas, I don't know. But anyway, I think that's the reference. But wow, this is one of my go-to Porky and Daffy team-ups that McKimson did. And this is just the perfect way to have Porky as the straight man and Daffy is just this obnoxious, annoying character. And this is actually one of the last few shorts where Daffy is still this obnoxious, wackier character before McKimson finally takes on the whole greedy Daffy thing that Jones had started to do. But what do you think of this one?
I think it's great. I definitely do think that in terms of McKimson, he gave Daffy his relevancy by changing his sort of crazy, outgoing attitude for more of a very obnoxious attitude where he was very much just willing to do whatever, but in a very cranky, just jerk way, rather than just being a complete jerk all around for the sake of being a jerk and being egotistical. He just very much wanted to do things his way. He was stubborn.
And I'm glad because we get a few of these shorts before he finally just decides, you know what, I'm going to do what everyone else is doing, which I think is after the mini shutdown that they had in 1953. I like the opening where we just got the fact that Daffy's like, yeah, I'm not flying, I'm going to do it the smart way, because car travel was starting to really pick up, especially in the post-war years, and rail travel was starting to decline. Plane travel was still way too expensive for a lot of people around this time. I mean, alright, it still is, but still, it was even worse.
At this point, the major roads were starting to really be built under Truman and Eisenhower. I believe Eisenhower began serving under this year, which would make it a lot more relevant, as he's really the one that pushed that whole idea further of the major highways and such. But by this point, getting down the East Coast was getting a lot more easier, and it makes a lot of sense to do hitchhiking. Though, I don't know how many people hitchhike to get on vacation or for, I guess, business reasons. I guess you could say a duck going south is their business.
Hitchhiking in the US, as I understand it, and people can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but as I understand it, for a period of time, hitchhiking was seen as pretty much acceptable practice, but it'd be pretty much for shorter distances. It'd be more like, they might be in a smaller town, just needing to get to the nearest major town or something, like just a bum a ride, maybe. But in terms of what Daffy's doing, I don't know, I highly doubt that would go all the way south, especially past Mudville. Speaking of which, where is this Mudville that we see in this cartoon? I wonder if there is a town called Mudville. It'd be definitely interesting.
I think Mudville is actually, a bar in New York City.
Oh, there you go.
Town in Casey at the bat as well. That poem. So I guess Daffy is really just a loser, and I guess maybe that hints at it.
Maybe. My favorite scene in this short, and this is a great short, and it's got a lot of great scenes, but I just liked the ridiculous scene at the beginning where no one's pulling over for Daffy until someone finally does, and it's this guy, he's driving a very long out-of-date vehicle, even for 1952, and I think it's like a Model T Ford or something from the late 1800s or something.
It would have been the late 1910s for what I understand about that particular model, and even then, most of those would have been scrapped off for World War II for the scrap drive, so they would not have been relevant at this point. They had already been really irrelevant by World War II. It's just ridiculous to see this kind of a car, and even him wearing the whole driver suit that was relevant in the turn of the century for people that had automobiles.
Yeah, exactly, with the goggles and all that stuff. And the delivery by Mel Blanc is absolutely hysterical, where he pulls over just to drive a point home that, no, he never picks up hitchhikers. This just kills me.
Say, boy, you know something, boy? I never pick up hitchhikers. Nope, I never do. Never do. Goodbye.
Yeah, and it's relatable too, especially when I do get the odd comment saying that they would rather watch a cartoon than a review. Okay, why don't you do what this driver should have done and just drive on by? You don't need to tell me this. If you're not happy with what I'm doing, just drive on by. It's insane. But anyway, I just thought that scene was hilarious. It just seemed like out of nowhere, you just got this guy driving this old Model T car. But anyway, and we finally get, after some really bad attempts of trying to hitchhike, Daffy's, you know what, I'm just going to paint this reasonable facsimile of the Grand Canyon, as he says, which looks nothing like it, but I thought that was really good. It was really funny. And we see Porky in the straight man role. He's just trying to get to, I'm assuming, Miami, Miami or bust. And yeah, that's when the comedy really starts to pile on. And we get a rule of three. The whole... now, we say boot, and you guys say trunk. Okay. We first see, of course... so Porky's, oh, how did you fit all this in? And he's, well, I'll show you. And then we get the explosion and the wonderful thing of Porky's face when the bag lands his face and the pantaloon flap falls down, right? Then we see it happen with the police officer trying to... what was Daffy's plan there? Just what? Assault a police officer and drive off? But anyway. And we, of course, get the capper at the end, which we'll discuss in a moment.
One thing I noticed in McKimson shorts that isn't really relevant in Freeland's or Jones is that he renders the humans a lot more realistic, in stark contrast to the animals, who tended to really be the most relevant characters in his shorts. And he does simplify them when he has humans as the stars, but in this case, that's not what's happening. He just has human incidentals in between Daffy and Porky. When you look at the police, he has a very well-renditioned head. And I guess maybe that's just how McKimson preferred drawing humans, not very stylized. And he drew them very realistic, including the long arm of the law, which most police officers have.
Of course, it's a realistic rendition of an arm, that really long arm. It's a very Tex Avery-esque gag, along with that whole hairpin turn that we see a little bit earlier as well. It's pretty good, it's pretty funny. And speaking of Tex Avery-esque jokes, of course, we have that whole road rage, that little car that's behind, and Porky... he does what I pretty much do on the road. It's like, you know what, I don't have time and effort to deal with these idiots, so I'll just get out of the way. There's no sense to even bother trying to challenge it. But anyway, but of course, Daffy's, no, you don't let that pipsqueak get past us. And we all know where that gag's going to go, and it's still funny anyway, where you know that something really ridiculous was going to come, and sure enough, it's not only a realistic human, but a really tall one as well.
The way that they try to angle his height to make him much taller reminds me of mid-40s McKimson, where he would do these odd angles of the two characters in one scene where one was up taller than the other, where they would have the weird angles. As someone who drives on the Garden State Parkway, I can easily confirm that, yes, always let them pass by. You do not want to get caught up with bad, obnoxious drivers. Let them make their own mistakes and just don't let them crash you.
Later on, once we see the police officer, and that's pretty funny as well, where Porky's, he's trying to be reasonable, as you should be with the police officer, and I will put an asterisk there for reasons which people should know, of course, by now. But obviously, you talk to him reasonably, and Daffy's like, nah. We get this wonderful bit of wordplay.
Relax. I'll handle this. Officer, this man's been acting very suspiciously. If I were you, I'd have a look in the back of the car.
Well,
In the back. Boing! Oh, no! Please don't look in the back compartment, Mr. Officer.
So the police officer's thinking, oh, you're clearly hiding something, and then... of course, we end up at Mudville, at the police station. There's one bit here I do have to wonder if you take a listen to it. It's the background noise when Daffy's upset that Porky only has to pay $2.
With a habeas corpus.
What?
We hear this like a background noise, and I do wonder, is that just generic noise that they just happen to record, like when they were testing a microphone or something?
It definitely sounds like a crowd behind doors. I don't think they would have ever used a real court for it, so I guess Trey Brown may have just recorded some guys on lunch break from behind a wall and just used it. But it does sound very clear, so you could be right about it being a mic test. It's a good noise for the court, though.
Yeah, there's nothing exactly wrong with it. It just sounded very different to everything else in this short. And
Yeah, it sounds like it really was recorded with a new mic.
So maybe just a little test or something. But yeah, no, I just thought it was interesting. And as we get to the end, Porky's expression whenever he gets angry at Daffy in these shorts is always priceless. I'll always love that expression, where finally this straight character is just, he's at his wit's end. And
yeah.
And not only do we get a punchline, we also get a topper. And Porky he makes at the end, here's your present. It's in the, trunk. We say boot, as like I said before. And yeah, we get the punchline.
Oh boy, I wonder what it is. I gotta see.
The thing that's always good about these cartoons that I guess a lot of modern cartoonists don't really get is that in the end, always the straight man he isn't completely wrecked and always gets ahead, and it always just leaves the guy who was causing all the trouble. He's left in a mess created by himself that he thought was being put on someone else. But of course, Daffy should just fly. Again, someday that duck's gonna remember that he can fly.
Well, he does in the upcoming Fish Feeling short about going to the south, so...
We'll talk about it then. I just find it really interesting that there were 2 Daffy Going South cartoons with Porky in them in 1952, and I do agree this is one of the best ones, even if there's not really much trivial to say. It's just a great cartoon.
Exactly. And this one gets 8.5 out of 10 for me. I really love this one. It really is one of my favourite of the Daffy and Porky team-ups that McKimson did in the late 40s, early 50s, and just makes me smile. It's not exactly a standout, but man, is it a whole lot of fun. What would you rate this one?
8 out of 10. Definitely a short of great standard. McKimson has a far better run this year than I would say in 1951, where he was just trying to figure things out with a writer change, I guess you would say. And he does hit it very well in this period before he has the shutdown, and he really has to settle for a much lower budget than he should have.
Yeah, which is absolute shame. But at least this year, from what I can see, Daffy's still going to be that wackier character for the rest of 1950, in contrast to what everyone else was doing. So I'm really glad that's the case, because these ones are definitely the better ones. But I do agree that McKimson was figuring things out in 1951 because his output was very hit or miss. He was trying all these new characters, opossums and that sort of thing. A lot of it were misfires, unfortunately. Corn Plastered, I really didn't like that one. But at least here, he shows that he really was a good director as long as the writer came through for him. So
could give him something to work with. And he, of course, had enough to do good animation with.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty straightforward. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.
That fall, folks.
Gotta see.